everyone. My name is LaQuinda Christian Thornton. On behalf of the Fairfax County Alumni Chapter President, Helene Fisher, and the members of the Financial Fortitude Committee, it is my pleasure to welcome and thank you for joining us this evening. We have an exciting and informative session planned that we hope engages all of you. Tonight, we will focus on building a strong financial foundation through real estate investing and obtaining equity in your residential property. At this time, please give your attention to Ms. Angelina McCarthy-Bryan, who will introduce our guest speaker for the evening. Angelina?
Thank you so much, Sarah LaQuinda. And I appreciate, and we as a committee appreciate you all joining us this evening. You could have been anywhere, but you are here on a Friday to learn, to receive, to get knowledge about more understanding when it comes to investing and real estate and equity in your property as well. So again, we are grateful. I am going to take us through a little bit of a look back as to how we derived at this great topic this evening. So we're going to take a look here at our screens, and we are going to now note that tonight we are focused on one of a very important topics, which is real estate investing and obtaining equity in your residential property. And tonight we will actually have with us Buki Dele, who will be explaining to us more about that and how we can in turn understand what we should be doing and how we should be doing it. So we are going to start from our inception here, and this is again moving forward. So previously we have had sessions when it came to the foundation of building a strong foundation, financial foundation at that. And so we began our journey focusing in on using the fundamental principles to create our own blueprint. And this has allowed us to kind of go through our sessions here and build upon them with each session that we've had. We also brought about Amy Griffin, who was our attorney who deals with real estate and, specifically estate planning. And she was with us and brought a wealth of knowledge and information there. And then I also brought to our forefront here the long-term care insurance, which was a wonderful educational piece and understanding how that formulates into our financial plan. We also brought with us author Jason Howe, who was able to bring to us the 7 strategies for transforming your finances. And again, another great presentation that brought us to the forefront where we are tonight. Then we brought about building our strong foundation. And this purpose was to understand in even more in depth as to how we can build that blueprint and how we can really understand that. So Amy was brought back by popular demand because folks wanted to know, how can we take a more in-depth look into estate planning. I'm really focused on real estate tonight, but it's estate planning they wanted to know more about. And actually real estate forms, and there's a greater understanding that Buki will give us tonight about how real estate and having an estate plan and how we can really implement that and understanding that purpose. Well, we brought about Eugene Mitchell, Jason Howe, Amy Tremaine, and myself to do what was known as closing the wealth gap. In addition to that, we brought about cryptocurrency 101 to understand more about how that can be implemented in our financial portfolio. With us, we also brought authors Eugene, and in addition to that, we also brought Jason Howe. In addition to that, we also had from our cryptocurrency collection, we were also able to bring Ansela Ramsey, who was able to share with us about the journaling and the aspects there. Now, to even dive deeper, we took a look at something we haven't done before. This was understanding the way our mind works as it pertains to our mind and money. And so we brought author and presenter Kavette Minor-Kane to present on that. Now, this evening, just so we know and understand that this is how we like to make sure that our disclosures are provided. So when it comes to Fairfax County Alumni Chapter, this is an informational presentation. We understand that individual situations can vary. Neither the information presented nor any opinion expressed constitutes a solicitation for the purchase or sale of any specific security. In addition to that, neither Fairfax County Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated or the members of the Financial Fortitude Committee are endorsing any individual, investment, product, or service discussed. Please consult with your financial advisor, financial services professional, tax, legal, accounting professional before making any decisions. And this is regarding our Helene L. Fisher president and our chapter. With that, this is what's interesting. When we talked about the blueprint, we specifically spoke about looking at our finances as a house. Well, today we will actually be doing that because we'll be talking about real estate. So we're talking about protection, accumulation, preservation, but more importantly, how that impacts the actual home itself. So with that, as an understanding with your overall financial portfolio, there are things that we should be looking at. Of course, our home is one of them. And we looked at things like our estate planning trust. We looked at things like home, auto, disability, long-term care insurance, health insurance, et cetera, and with more to come. So tonight, we want to make sure that most people, we understand they don't plan to fail. But if they do fail, it's because maybe they have not planned, and we want to prevent that. So most people don't plan to fail, they fail to plan, and that hopefully will not be anyone here tonight. So without further ado, I will be reading our bio for Buki Dele tonight. So meet Buki, an accomplished and licensed realtor with over 18 years of experience in the Northern Virginia and Maryland markets. She is dedicated to helping her clients achieve their real estate goals and build wealth through strategic real estate investments. Buki takes a consultative approach to her work, providing personalized service and taking time to understand her clients, individuals, whom their needs and their preferences. Her extensive knowledge of the market and her ability to connect with clients makes her a valuable asset in navigating the Northern Virginia and Maryland real estate markets. She guides her clients through every step of the process, ensuring that they are informed and comfortable every step of the way. In addition to her successful career in real estate, Buki is also a fitness enthusiast who enjoys weightlifting, outdoor workouts, and staying active in general. Additionally, she has a deep love of travel, exploring other cultures, and the ocean. Her dedication to her clients and her own growth makes her an invaluable partner for anyone looking to make a move in the Northern Virginia and Maryland real estate markets. Without further ado, we present Buki Dele.
Thank you so much, Angelina, for such a warm welcome, and also to the Delta Fairfax Alumni Chapter. I really appreciate you inviting me tonight, and I had a chance to see some of the other presenters, learned a lot from them. And for anyone who hasn't listened to those, I would implore you to do so. I feel honored to have been invited to present here and just give my little bit of contribution to the Financial Fortitude Fridays. I love what you guys are doing with this, and I'm glad to be a part of it. So I am going to share my screen, and that way we can dive right into it. All right, hopefully you can see that. All right, so tonight we're talking about real estate investing and obtaining and preserving equity in your property. And I'm going to start off with who I am. As Angelina stated, I'm a realtor. I've been one since 2004. And recently I've added to that. And in addition to being a realtor, I am a real estate planner. So that's a licensed realtor with certifications, knowledge, training, and experience to help guide real estate owners in ways to help them create wealth, protect the wealth, especially when they transfer it. A lot of wealth is lost in transfer to taxes. So I help people identify ways that they can save and minimize taxes, and then facilitate the goals of the family. So helping our communities build wealth and legacy through real estate is at the core of everything that we do. And I love that it really lines up with the Financial Fortitude Fridays. So again, thank you so much for having me. So I work with Keller Williams. I work on a team called the CASA Group. And as one of the reasons that I aligned with the team is because I wanted to be in proximity with who I believed was the best when it came to investing, teaching people how to invest, and being able to teach me as a real estate agent how to help my clients be better at investing. So through that alliance, I got certified as a GRID agent investor. GRID is our investor network, and it's open to everybody, agents, CPAs, anyone who is interested in investing. So through that, I got certified as an agent investor. I have learned how to better serve my clients through that certification. I'm also a senior relocation specialist certified, and I help seniors downsize, and not just downsizing their space and decluttering. I help with that too. I also help with downsizing assets and making sure that they are correctly positioned to downsize their assets and retain the wealth that they've built over the years. And, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not a CPA. I work in conjunction with them. I'm able to help identify when people are in need of those services and put them in touch with the right people. Got certified in 1031 exchanges and DSTs. DSTs are Delaware Statutory Trust. High level, very similar to a 1031 exchange. It helps investors defer taxes. Again, I'm not a CPA. I'm not a financial advisor. I personally do not do them. I'm not the intermediary. I'm able to identify when people are in need of those services because it helps them save, in some cases, hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxes if they know about these services. In addition to that, I will be getting certified, learning more about trust and probate. Again, not a financial advisor, not an estate attorney, but being able to refer my clients to the right people. And I very strongly believe in the power of a network. Your net worth is equal to your net worth. And it's so important that you are connected to the right people, because what I've learned over time in all my years in real estate is that people make mistakes that cost them money in the future. I had the pleasure of listening to Amy. You ladies had Amy on. She's the estate planner. I had the pleasure of listening to her, and I see it very often as a realtor where people will add their children onto the deeds of their homes. And what that essentially does is it eliminates the ability for their children not to have to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxes. So if I can get to these people early and just have the conversations with them, put them in touch with someone in the network, like an Amy, it saves everybody money. So that's one way that we build wealth and preserve your equity. Because what's the purpose of growing all that equity if you're going to give it away to the IRS? And they will collect. They will take everything that you give to them. So leadership matters. Freedom of finances, time, and choice is our ultimate purpose. We build wealth because we want those freedoms. Now, we on our team welcome investors of all experience levels. In fact, I work a lot with investors that are starting out and then continuing and helping them to continue their journey. And then on the flip side, I work with people that are downsizing and helping them protect that wealth that they've built over time. As a lifelong learner, you saw in the earlier slide, I have multiple certifications. And the purpose of that is not to have letters behind my name. The purpose of that is to dive deeper and gain more knowledge so that I can bring it to the community and help them preserve their wealth. So as we move forward, think about these questions. What are your financial goals in real estate? Before you jump into investing in real estate, you need to have an idea of what your goals are. Are you looking to generate passive income? Are you planning for retirement? All of that will help you determine which path to take, because there's so many ways that you can invest in real estate. So, risk tolerance, you have to think about that too. The market fluctuates. And when it fluctuates, it changes things. It affects your investments. Property management challenges. If you buy a property to rent out and every other week you're having to put money into it, that affects your bottom line. So those are things that you have to think about when it comes to risk tolerance. Investment knowledge. How are you educating yourself? Well, if you're here tonight on a Friday night and you have been throughout this series, then you're putting in the time to gain the knowledge and make sure that you know what you're getting into. And that's, you need to know, you need clarity on that. What's your investment strategy? Knowing the answers to all of those questions will help you determine your strategy. If you are a 22-year-old just starting out in life, your investment strategy is going to vary drastically from someone who is 72 years old. So you need to know where you are and what strategy you're going to go with. Costs. Everybody wants to know what the costs are that are involved in this. So before you get into it, those are things that you should research. Acquisition costs, renovation costs, hold-in costs, repair costs. There are costs that go into it, and knowing what the costs are, knowing what to expect will help you plan better. All right.
Buki, these are some great questions. In fact, we have a question for our audience.
Okay.
Really quickly. We're going to bring up a very quick poll because we believe in participation. So the poll is going to come up. We're going to ask everyone to please take a moment and answer the question that's going to be before you. And I will read that question out to you, and then we'll resume our presentation. And the question is the percentage of white home ownership greater than that of Black and Brown families? So please answer the poll, whether you say yes, which is our choice 1, or whether no, choice 2. We'll take some time as the polls are going. Again, is the percentage of white home ownership greater than that of Black and Brown families? So we still got some movement on the poll here. Looks like we have stopped moving. We're going to come back to this question. So let's keep listening in. Thank you, Buki.
You're welcome. So just to reiterate the legal stuff, I am a realtor. I'm a real estate planner. I'm not a CPA, not an attorney, not a financial advisor. So anything that I say here today is from a real estate perspective. And before you make any decisions that are legal or financial, you definitely want to consult with your CPAs, your attorneys, your financial advisors. All right. So let's talk about winning. How do you win when it comes to investing? You win by having your passive income exceed your household expenses. That's the purpose when we get into investing in real estate. We want our money to work for us and exceed the household expenses. And that gives you a level of freedom. So the goal is to learn the rules, build a business, and acquire investments. Leverage. We use leverage. We leverage our money to make more money for us. So I'm sure a lot of you have read Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. This is one of the primary financial education books that's out there. And so I wanted to touch on the cash flow quadrant that comes from that book. You can see from the graph, top left is the employees, and then self-employed on the bottom of that, and that's on the poor dad side. And then on the right side, you have business owners and investors taught to him by his rich dad. Now, employees trade time and skill for money. You have to go to work in order to get the money. It involves you. You have to be there. Now, there's security in that because somebody else takes the risks with the business. The risks aren't on you. You just show up, you work, you get your money, and you keep on going. Well, here are the problems. You pay more in taxes than anyone else when you're an employee. Also, if you don't work, you don't get paid. So imagine if you get ill or you just want to take some time off. You have to think about that when you make those decisions. And then there's the self-employed, and that's where you're the boss. It's your business. It's your job that you own, but you get paid in direct proportion to how much you work a lot of times. Taxes are better than with the employee, and you're building something for yourself, and that's great. But here's the thing, just like with the employee, you stop working, the money goes away. So then the next part of the quadrant is the business owners. This is where you own a business. This is where you have systems, you have people that can help the business run, even if you're not there. So if you're able to take a vacation, go away for a month or take a few days off if you want to, and the business still continues to run, then you know you have a business. But ultimately, we want to get to the fourth quadrant, the investor. As an investor, you own assets, and those assets work for you. And I'm sure that throughout this series, you've heard about different forms of that. Tonight, we're focusing on real estate assets. So you own those assets, they work for you, they increase in value, you pay down the debt, and they grow in equity and value. And that's how you build wealth in a nutshell. So where are you in the quadrant? Just take a moment to think about it, and where do you want to be? Now, there's no wrong answer when it comes to the quadrant. There are people who choose to stay in the employee quadrant because they're doing something that they love, something that they're passionate about, and that's great. Now, if those people do want to get to a point where they can choose to stop, then investing is definitely necessary. All right, so reality check. So I have some steps here, 6 steps that I'm going to go through. Number 1 is think about where you are. In order to get to where you want to go, you need to know where you are. So think about what you're spending. Are you overspending in any part of your life? Are there expenses that you can cut out, that you can eliminate? If your goal is to become an investor, you may need to make some changes because you need funds to be able to fund that dream. There are tools like Intuit, mint.com that can help you track your budget. It's also really, really important to track your wealth. So, there was a time where I had a negative net worth. And I'm sure so many people experience that at some point in life. And there's nothing more exciting to come out of that and get to a 0 net worth, because at that point, even if you don't own anything, it means that you don't owe anything, and then you can build from there. So if you're in the negative right now, that's fine. Track it. Pay attention, watch your spending, see where you can make changes, but just keep an eye on it, track it weekly. Personal Capital is an app that I've used to track net worth, and it helps keep you on track, especially if you track it weekly. So let's move on to step 2. You need to learn the language of real estate investing, and you especially need to know what a good deal looks like in your area. So what I've found as a realtor, when people come to me and they want to invest in real estate, a lot of people are all over the place. They don't know what they want. They don't know where they want to invest. They don't know what types of investments they want to get into. And that's why I asked the questions earlier. You need to assess where you are. You need to figure out what your goal is. That way you can craft a plan, a strategy. You can sit down with your network, with your team, and come up with a strategy on how to get to where you want to go. So knowing what the cash on cash return on a property that you're considering purchasing for your portfolio or to fix and flip is very important. You need to know if the numbers work, if the deal makes sense. Basic formula for a fix and flip. So some people like to fix and flip properties. That's one way that you can invest in real estate. I'm going to pause here and say, you don't get wealthy by with one property. You also don't get wealthy with getting rid of properties. So it's really important to diversify. If you are a fix and flipper, consider buying properties and keeping them in your portfolio, because that's where you start to build wealth with a portfolio. So if you're fixing and flipping properties, a general rule of thumb, this is very general, is think about the after repair value of a property. I'll use $100,000 as an example, even though we don't have properties at that price in our county. So we'll use $100,000 as an example for the sake of easy math. Property after repair value, $100,000. You don't want to pay more than 70% of that minus the renovation costs. So 70% of that would be $70,000, and assume that the renovation costs are $10,000. That will bring you to a $60,000 purchase price for that property. Now, can you make changes? Are there situations where it might make sense to pay more? Sure. Are there situations where you should probably pay less? Sure. That's a very general rule. So you would have to analyze each situation. Now, when it comes to buying and holding properties, a general rule for that is the 1% rule. If you're buying a $5,000 property, you want it to rent for $5,000 a month. But in our area, unfortunately, that rule doesn't really work out. In a lot of areas in the country, other areas of the country, they do, but because of the prices of our real estate, that 1% rule really doesn't work out for us. So we don't have the benefit of that, but we do have the benefit of appreciation. Our properties hold value and they appreciate. So that's another thing to look at is, will this property appreciate over time? There are markets in the country, Cumberland, Maryland comes to mind as an example. They cash flow very well, but they don't appreciate very well. You could buy a property there and get the benefit of the cash flow, and that's great. And then 30 years from now, when you go to sell that property, you sell it for exactly what you paid for it. Not necessarily a problem. I mean, you got the benefit of the cash flow over those 30 years, and at some point you paid it off. So it's not a good or a bad thing, but that's somewhere where you need to gain clarity as an investor and see what's important to you. You might want a mix of both of those types of properties in your portfolio. In Northern Virginia, your cash flow might be very minimal, if much at all, but the appreciation on the property tends to be a lot more significant. So it's something to keep in mind. Step 3, learning how to prospect, network, and market for deals. So these are 3 different ways to find properties. When you prospect for deals, it's usually free or very low cost because you're putting in action. It requires you to do something active, like drive for dollars. When you're driving for dollars, you're trying to identify properties that might be a good addition to your portfolio or a good fix and flip if that's what you're doing. Or if you are a wholesaler, a good property that you might be able to get under contract and sell that contract to another investor that will either fix and flip or add it to their portfolio. So what are you looking for when you drive for dollars? You're looking for properties that have overgrown grass, maybe a boarded up window, maybe tarp on the roof. You're looking for signs that that property is in distress. Maybe it's abandoned, signs that the owner may not be able to take care of it or may not want the property, or maybe they need help. They need a solution, and you can be that person to provide them with the solution. You can also make offers on properties. You can find those properties by gaining access to the MLS, either through your real estate agent or through one of the portals like Zillow or Realtor.com. Find the properties and start to learn how to analyze them. Pay attention to what properties are selling for. If you look at a property today, or let's say in February, go back and see what that property sold for. Go back and see what properties in that neighborhood sold for. You can start to gain this knowledge. It's almost like exercising. You know, if you wanted to change your body, you'd have to change your diet, you'd have to change the level of activity that you're doing. And when it comes to real estate, you have to put in the reps as well. You got to start analyzing properties, and you can find that information online or with the help of your real estate agent. Networking. You can network places with other investors, with wholesalers, with agents. Your CPA, your financial advisor might be able to help you with that. Our grid network, it's open to anyone, no cost. It's a networking group where there are investors that would be your mentor, that would provide money for your deals, that would maybe sell you a deal if that's what you're looking for. Networking. So it's really about connecting with people. Marketing. Marketing costs money. You have to identify the people that you're going to market to. You have to figure out the messaging, and then you have to send them something to entice them to come to you. With prospecting, you're going to them. Maybe you're knocking on their door. With marketing, you're sending them something and having them contact you. In step 4, so I'm going to hang out here a little bit because we're talking about real estate investing and we're talking about growing your equity. And a lot of first-time investors come to me and they want to fix and flip properties. And the reason for that, you flip a property, you make a lot of money. You can, if you do it correctly, you can make a lot of money, and it's immediate gratification. With buying rental properties, it's slow. It's the slow cooker. You've got to buy the property, you put the money into it, and then you put a renter in it, and then you wait. And you let life happen. You let time do what time does in real estate. So I like to talk to people about buying rental properties using the BRRRR method. So if you've ever heard that before, the BRRRR method is BRRRRRRRR. And it stands for buy. First, you buy a property and you want a property that needs work, because you typically get better deals on properties that are distressed, or maybe an owner who needs help. So someone that's motivated to sell. So you buy the property, then you renovate it. Whatever renovations that are needed, you do those. Then you rent it out, attract great tenants who will then pay down the mortgage. And then the next step is to refinance the property, pull out equity from that property, and then you do it again. You do it again. It's basically like you're recycling your money. You put the money into buying it, renovating it, then you pull your money back out and you do it with the next property. Now, the goal in this is to get a tenant in there that will cover the mortgage and hopefully your cash flowing. That's the goal. And you have to know the numbers before you go into it in order to meet that goal. Now, when you do this multiple times, you start to build your portfolio, but you're recycling the money. You're recycling your money and you're building your portfolio. So step 5, grow a network of professionals to help you manage the portfolio. This is something you don't want to do alone. You need agents and multiple, everybody knows probably 2, 3, 4, 5 real estate agents. Those could be people that help you find deals or partner with you on deals. Lenders, the people that are going to give you the money to buy those, to fund those deals. Property managers, if you're buying rental properties to keep, they can manage the property for you. Because if you want to be hands off, you want your money to be more passive, then turn it over to a property manager. But just remember, when you're considering your costs for getting real estate, you need to consider that as a cost. You're trading money to get your time back. Otherwise, you're very hands-on. If you own multiple properties, have multiple tenants, you want a buffer. You don't want them calling you. Contractors, you have to renovate the properties most of the time. Even if you found a turnkey property, at some point in the life of that property, you're going to have to put in some repairs. So make sure that you have contractors on your team. Attorneys for legal things. You want financial advisors to help you determine whether you use money from your bank account, you use other people's money, whether you pull money from investments. You need to talk to your financial advisor. They're your partner in this. And of course, real estate planners who specialize in real estate investments. So as an example, I have multiple partners. Home remodeling, Sell Simply is a company that we personally invest with. We buy properties together because we're able to leverage each other. And I, for example, would buy into a property without having to buy the entire property. Step 6, don't wait to buy real estate. Buy real estate and wait. I'm not sure if you've heard that before, but if you have, here's what it means. In this market, a lot of people are scared to pull the trigger because interest rates are high, right? They're scared to pull the trigger, but most people need somewhere to live anyway. Buy the real estate. Time in the market is what helps you build that equity. And I'll give you an example. I worked with a client in 2020, the end of 2021. They had bought their property in 1968. Original owners lived in the property the entire time. The owner passed away and the family sold the property. And thankfully, they'd done all the right things. They talked to somebody like Amy. Their property was in a family trust and everything was protected. But they sold the property in 2021 after Dad passed away. And they sold it for $876,000. Dad purchased that property for $34,000, and he paid it off within the 30-year period, if not sooner. So 1968 to 2021, that's a long time. So there were many years of mortgage-free living that took place in that property. Now think about it. If you're renting, you start renting in 1968, and in 2021, you move out. What do you get? Maybe you get your security deposit back, and maybe you don't. So that's something to think about. So that's where, with a lot of my first-time investors, that's where we start. We start with the primary residence. And some of those investors then move on to do something that we call house hacking. Usually the younger ones that don't have families living with them. If you haven't heard of house hacking, that's where you leverage your house. You live in one part of the house and you rent out another part of the house. In other parts of the country, have, they have the ability to buy duplexes. Here, not so much. We don't have those here. So what people do is buy a single family home or a townhome, and one person lives on the top floors of the townhome, and then they rent out the basement to somebody else. So we help people buy for that purpose. So you need a basement that has a full bathroom. So house hacking, that's one way that you can leverage your house to increase or to just pay down your mortgage and help with your equity. You can choose to apply that money that your tenant is giving you to the equity, or you could save it for the next purchase. It's all up to you. But that's another way that you can preserve equity or grow the equity in your home. So that was 6 steps. Now, what's stopping you? You know, there's so many people. I meet people that want to invest in real estate. And I've been doing this since 2004. And I've met people way back then that wanted to invest in real estate. And almost 20 years later, they still want to invest in real estate. And there's something that's stopping them. One of the fears that holds people back is that they feel they don't have the money. I've been there. I thought I needed lots and lots and lots of money of my own to invest in real estate. But you don't need your money. If you find a deal, the people with the money will partner with you. They'll throw money at you if it's a great deal. So you just need to find the deal. You need to prospect, network, market, find a deal. Everyone starts at 0. Myth number 2, I don't know enough. And that's understandable. It really is. But the cheapest, freest information can be found at YouTube University. And I've graduated with multiple degrees from there. And I know so many people who have so much information for free out there. Now, you could put a question into Google and you'll get 32 different answers for one question. So how do you know where to go? You know, for me, I chose to align with the CASA group and the Grid Network because I know the person that started that, Rob Chavez, and I knew that he was the best person for me to learn from. And that's why I wanted to align with the team. So you have to figure out who you want to align with. The people in your network can help you determine that. Your financial planners, financial advisors, your CPAs, your estate attorneys, they're connected as well. And they can connect you with people that they trust, that you can also trust. So I know there's a lot of information on Google and even YouTube. So you have to know how to narrow that down. But again, everyone starts at 0, and gaining some knowledge and acting on it is key. The action is key. So myth number 3, I don't have any connections. Well, you do. You've been part of Financial Fortitude Fridays for a while, and these ladies have brought connections to you. And as you learn on YouTube, you'll start to get introduced to people. You'll start to pinpoint people who are experts at the type of investing that you are interested in. Your real estate agent, your contractor, all of those people are connections. Build your network and then stay close to it. So we find that the reason that most people don't move forward is fear. People are afraid. And again, I've been there. The lack of knowledge causes fear. Then on the flip side, there's some people that just keep on learning. They overanalyze everything and they never take action. Don't be that person. If you have the right network, if you have the connections, that will help you with taking action. Stick your baby toe in there. Align with them, partner with them on a deal. Get your feet wet, and then you can gain confidence to be able to do it yourself. Put yourself out there. Find mentors. Be careful of the bad advice. Be careful of who you surround yourself with. It's not always about what you want to hear. You have to make sure that what you are hearing is valuable information. So your network is connected to your net worth. So what else is there to learn? Lots. Anyone here who has invested in real estate or is an investor or has touched real estate investing in any way knows that there are so many ways that you could go. But it all starts for the people who aren't there yet. It all starts with your first home, because once you get the first one, it'll be easier to take the next step. You can buy a home, you can house hack, you can fix and flip. We're talking about gaining equity and building wealth. So you definitely want to build that portfolio with your rental properties. You need to learn how to evaluate rentals and flip properties, because sometimes the flip properties put money in your pocket to be able to buy the property that you're going to hold on to. So just think about that. It's just like any other type of investing. You diversify for various reasons, but you definitely need to know what your goals are and have a clear path to that. Otherwise, you'll do some of everything. I've met people that want to buy land and multifamily units, and they want to invest in storage units, and they want to invest in North Dakota and Ohio and Virginia, and they're all over the place. So the first step is having a clear strategy that you can follow. So some of you may or may not have heard of Subject 2 and other creative financing methods. So I'll touch on this. Buying a property Subject 2 is buying it subject to the existing loan, meaning the seller of that property keeps the loan in their name, and you as the investor will take over the payments. Now, why would somebody do that? In some cases, it's a distressed seller and or a distressed property. They need help, and you're providing the solution. So you can get them out of the mess that they're in with the property, maybe pay them some money from their equity. They can go along on their way. You take over the payments. And of course, there's paperwork that goes into that. That's where the attorneys and other people come in. There's paperwork that protects both parties, right? But it helps you because that loan never goes on your credit. So it allows your credit to stay free to be able to do other investments, right? To buy other properties. Because there's a limit to the number of properties that you can finance based on your debt to income ratio. So this is one way that you can circumvent that. Now, a lot of banks have a due on sale clause. So this is a question I get about Subject 2 financing. What happens when the property transfers ownership? Well, that's where your trust attorney, estate attorney comes in. That property goes into a trust, so it doesn't trigger the due on sale clause. And it's a completely legal thing to do. The banks don't care as long as they're getting their money. Now, there are a small number of banks that will care. Those are not the properties that you're going after. So this is one way that you can build your portfolio. Now, this property here on the screen, this is one of the properties that our group has purchased, and it's a short-term rental in the Shenandoah area. and we use it as an Airbnb. And this was purchased subject to. So it allows you, and I'll give you another reason why subject to is important for you to be aware of. Interest rates right now are fairly high, over 6%. Somebody who bought their property many years ago might have a 3% interest rate. So when you buy a property subject to, you're buying it with their interest rate, right? So that's something to consider. So it keeps your expenses low, and you can do things like turn it into an Airbnb. Now, in addition to short-term rentals, people buy properties and they do midterm rentals. Midterm rentals are good for corporations that relocate their employees and they need somewhere to stay while they look for their next home. Midterm rentals are good for traveling nurses, anyone who needs a place to stay for a short period of time. So that's another way that you can diversify your portfolio when you have rental properties. So long-term rentals, that's the standard rental. Short-term rentals, the Airbnbs. Midterm rentals, corporate travel nurses and such. So then you will definitely want to talk to your tax advisor about how to use the tax code to your advantage. In the beginning of this presentation, I touched on 1031 exchanges and DSTs. Not only do you want to protect your properties, but you want to be able to minimize taxes when you transfer those properties, whether you're selling them or transferring them to your heirs. So that's something you should write down. Make sure that if you are a property owner or plan to be one, you need to be in touch with your financial team on that. You also need to be in touch with them on how to structure your business to protect your assets. So again, the estate attorneys, business attorneys, you need to be in communication. It's a team effort. They're all part of your team. So next steps, feel free to reach out if you have any questions, if you are looking for any networks, any people that you can network with, if you are interested in just talking more about the things that I touched on. All of this was just a high level overview to get you thinking about some things. But I would say, to wrap this up, I would say that buying properties and holding on to them is one of the best ways to build wealth. So if you're a homeowner now and you're thinking about upgrading, maybe consider keeping the home that you're moving out of, turn it into a rental property. But not everyone has the risk tolerance for that. Going back to risk tolerance, not everyone has the risk tolerance for that. So it all depends on you individually. So any questions?
Thank you so much, Buki, for this wonderful presentation you have given us. We are excited because we are asking for all of our participants this evening to please place your questions in the chat, and we will actually have our SARs who are designated to assist with our chat this evening from our Zoom and also from our Facebook Live participants, and we will get through each question as we go through. So please do not be shy. This is a great opportunity to have your questions answered by a real estate professional and, more importantly, a real estate planner with Buki. So while we are getting those questions in the chat, we are going to just do a quick summary, Buki, of some of this great knowledge that you have shared with us. First, you gave us 6 steps to follow, and those 6 steps were very informative. And out of the steps that I really enjoyed was your step number 2. And this is where you said specifically, you spoke about cash on return. Mm-hmm. You spoke about fix and flip. Mm-hmm. And you spoke about buy and hold.
Mhm.
And then I really enjoyed the BRRRR, because that was a great way to kind of sum that up, which was what we talked about, which was buy, renovate, rent, refinance, repeat.
Yep.
So that was some great knowledge there. I also enjoyed the fact that you spoke about time in the market to really build that equity, because we often talk about time being the common denominator for potential success in the market. So this really translates well in discussion with real estate. You spoke about house hacking. I think people may have understood the concept, but who knew it was called house hacking? That part I did not know it was titled that, but I know lots of people who rent out their basements or rent out portions of their home. But now we have I call it a hot term for it. So that was great, because I don't think we all may have known that. Some may, but I know I didn't. And I want to add the fact that you spoke about some myths. And one of the biggest myths, myth number one, really hit home. You don't need money. However, you do need money. It just doesn't necessarily have to be your money.
Yes.
And that was really, really key when you're finding a great deal. So that was something that was really important. It's almost like leveraging your network to get you to where you want to go, but still being financially, independent and focused simultaneously, but also bringing about your financial professionals. So you need your realtor, you need your CPA, you need your estate planner, you need your financial advisor, you need a financial team to help you get there and to be successful in getting there, because each person has their own expertise. So with that, I'm going to say thank you so much for your wealth of knowledge. We are going to turn it over to Sarah L.C. Daniels and Sarah Deshawn Robinson Chu to ask the questions for you to answer for us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Buki. That was a very enlightening presentation. And as a new homeowner, very neat. I wish I would have heard you before we bought our home, but I'm glad that we went ahead and bought the home and did not wait. We have a few questions. Our first question, I'm going to read it as it is written, but hopefully the question will come out. It says, please comment on how people like Jennifer Young, who advertised will sell your house in 7 days or will buy your house in 7 days, and some people who say that they'll buy your house as is. How does that work?
Okay. And first of all, Jennifer Young, I know her, love her. She's great. It is possible to buy a house within 7 days. Usually you need cash for that. So when buying a house with cash, the longest part of the process is getting the title work. You can get an inspection in 1 day. If you're getting one, a lot of investors will forego the inspection, especially if they've bought multiple houses. They know what to look for and they feel comfortable foregoing that. But the longest part of the process is really just obtaining the title work, and that can be done in 4 days, sometimes less. So it is definitely possible to buy a house in 7 days. So what I think that Jennifer means is they'll find you a buyer in 7 days. It does not mean that it will close in 7 days necessarily, or maybe it will if that buyer is a cash buyer. Now, the part that says, or we will buy your house as is, Jennifer Young, just like us, works with lots of investors. Our great investor network in this area, we have almost 5,000 investors in that network. So we can put a home in front of them and say, hey, do you want it? And they could buy it as is in 7 days. Investors a lot of times will buy a house as is. They don't need it to be pretty. They want to do the work. So hopefully that answered the question.
I hope so. It answered the question for me because I see those commercials all the time.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I saw one yesterday for express home buyers. They're everywhere.
yes.
Yeah.
Someone asked, can I do a subject to with a VA loan. But before, could you explain what a subject to is?
Yep, so subject to is purchasing a property with the existing loan in place. So the current owner keeps the loan in their name. You take over the payments. The property is transferred into a trust with rules. You know, that's why we put properties into trusts. And I think we learned that from, I think it was Amy that talked about it. The trust determines what happens. You know, you have the rules on that. So they keep the loan in their name. I saw a question somewhere that said, does your credit get run for a subject to? It does not.
Okay.
Does not. Your credit doesn't get run. It does not impact your credit at all because the loan never gets put in your name. Now, here's a question that people ask. Well, what if the investor stops paying? That's a possibility, but that's where the paperwork comes in. That's where the legal documents come in. And it would have to be written in such a way that the homeowner who has the loan would have the ability to take the property back. Now, a lot of properties that are bought subject to tend to need work. So that investor, when they take over the loan, also puts money into fixing up the property.
Mhm.
So it's a risk for the investor if they stop paying, but it's a benefit for the homeowner because the investor has now improved your property. And if you can't pay for it, if that's the reason that you are selling subject to, then you can sell it. So a lot of investors that go that route are in a position where they're able to pay. They also make sure that the deal makes sense so that if for some reason they couldn't pay, they could get out of it, maybe by selling it.
Okay.
And the question was,
Could they do a subject to with the VA loan?
you know, that is a good question. And I don't know the answer to that. I'm not sure if they can with a VA loan. If there's anyone in here that has done subject twos, maybe they can answer that. VA tends to have certain restrictions, and there's a part of me that wants to say no, but I'm not entirely sure. So that's something I can get an answer to you, Elsie, if you'd like to pass that on.
All right, that would be great.
Mhm.
So you answered the next question about whether your credit would get run if you have a subject to loan, which is no, because then you're not actually getting the loan. The loan is staying in someone else's name, which is a great way to buy a home if you can find someone to agree to do so.
Yeah.
We have someone who's asked multiple questions, so I really appreciate you. The first question they have is what sources can they tap into identifying private and hard money lenders?
Mhm. So the network, you know, we have a hard money lender that's one of our companies, and she's in the grid network, but there are also lots of other hard money lenders in that network. And I say that to say, even though grid is one of our companies, it's open to everyone. So we have our hard money lender that's there, but there are lots of other hard money lenders that are in there. And I typically encourage people to get into the network on the Facebook group or with a link that I'm happy to share if you'd like, and just get into the group and ask who's your favorite hard money lender. And here's the thing, because it's a group of investors, solid investors that have been doing this for a long time, they have their favorites. They have people that they've worked with. They can vouch for them. I've never worked personally with a hard money lender. You know, I can give you my recommendations. I know that ours is great because everybody says that she's great. And I know a couple of others that I could give. But really, it's tapping into your network and asking other investors who they work with. And every hard money lender is different in how much they charge and what they'll do. Ours will work with first time investors. A lot won't work with first time investors. So that's another thing to think about. But I would say get into the network and ask the people there, and they'll give you recommendations. And then you can talk to multiple people and see who you feel comfortable with.
That's great. Because everybody has their own preferences. Their second question is, what are the best sources they can tap into to find properties that are potential subject to opportunities?
So the way that we have found them, honestly, is marketing. Marketing is sending out letters. And because our focus is in the Shenandoah area, we're sending out letters just in that area. So for us, because we're a big company, we're able to blanket the area. Now, for someone who is a little bit more budget conscious, you want to start smaller, you can look for properties that are maybe older or that have been owned for a long time. You can connect with either a real estate agent to help you pull this data. Even you can connect with a title company, they can help you pull the data. And there are resources, websites online that you could use to pull data. But you're looking for properties maybe that are vacant, non-owner occupied. You might be looking for an investor that owns multiple properties to see if they want to offload one. You might even connect with or look in the public records for properties that are going through probate, even because sometimes heirs inherit properties that they don't want, especially if they live out of state. And they might be willing to sell it to you subject to. So those are a couple of ways that you can find them. And sometimes even just driving for dollars. Yeah.
And thank you for that. And their last question is, what is STR arbitrage? I believe that's how it's pronounced.
Arbitrage. Okay. So
Arbitrage.
short-term
Thank
rental.
you.
So that's people who are doing short-term rentals, Airbnbs, but they don't own the property. So they're renting properties and then they are Airbnb-ing those properties. Now, that's not my area of expertise. There's someone on my team who knows everything about that. I just know what it is, but I don't know how to get you into it.
Deshawn, do we have any Facebook questions?
No, however, Buki, I love all of this. So I appreciate all the information. I walk up to people and I go, brr. They some people know what I'm talking about and some don't. But we didn't have a question. We just had a viewer who said that this was awesome information and it was very informative and they appreciate it all.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for having me here. I really appreciate it. And if any other questions come up, I'm happy to answer. And I'll pass on the answer to the question about sub 2 with VA loans. I'll pass that on through Angelina, if that's okay.
Absolutely. And we'll get that to whomever had that question. We'll make sure to locate you and send it off to you. So we would like
We
again.
have another question just popped up.
There we go.
This question says, I'm a 3-year homeowner. How do I go about finding ways to possibly rent out a room in my house or the entire house to a nurse or resident? I live in Delaware, in the Delaware area, walking distance from a hospital and walking distance from a riverfront area as well.
Oh, wow. So I would say, given your unique situation, it sounds like your house is in a really great location. Now, I'm a Virginia and Maryland realtor, so I don't know the Delaware market, but if I were in your shoes, my first step would be to connect with an agent in Delaware that is well-versed in investing because they can help you with that. The last thing that you want is to find a tenant who destroys your home. And while we can never predict what a tenant will do, we can put you in the best possible position to get the best possible tenant by, doing all the right checks. and targeting in the right ways and preparing your home in the right ways. So I would say at the very least, have a conversation with an agent. There's no obligation when you do, and you don't have to pay for that consultation. In fact, you never have to pay the agent unless they rent out your property. And that's a choice that you have, whether you decide to work with them or not. But I tell people you can go and you can put your property on Zillow, you can put it on Military by Owner and different sites like that, and you could do it all yourself for free. But it's interesting because we have people that come to us that want to rent properties. When a property's in the multiple listing service, it's the creme de la creme. People automatically know you've got to have a great credit score, you've got to have the right income. They're going to check everything. And when buyer or tenants have come to us and they're looking to rent and they don't meet those standards, and I can't help them find something in the multiple listing service, my advice is, go to Zillow or go to one of those other sites, because a lot of times, unfortunately, the owners aren't as thorough in vetting those tenants. So I think it's worth it for whoever asked the question to connect with an agent in your area. It's worth it to pay to have them do that work, because it'll save you money in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Buki. And again, this is Buki's information. Again, you can reach out to whomever you desire to have assistance as it pertains to real estate. She is just one professional who is giving us these great nuggets, and we do appreciate that. And Buki, you have shared in the past, just on other channels, regarding how to find an agent as far as what you should look for in an agent before you partner, whether it's with investing or whether it's with buying or selling of your property. Can you share with us a little bit about how you kind of search for a great agent to work with?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that, start with a referral if you can get one. Referrals are great if you know someone who's worked with that agent and they had great things to say about them. Then check them out. At the very least, have a conversation with them, check their reviews on Google. We're in a society where reviews are everything and people do review everything. So check and see what their reviews are. Also, check and make sure that they are actually active in the market that you're in. Make sure that they're working and they know the market. I always recommend that you work with someone who's full-time in real estate. And the reason for that, when somebody isn't all in, as markets change, as we've seen happen in the last 2 and 3 years, even in the last 6 months, 3 months, people who aren't 100% in aren't always able to keep up with the changes, and that could hurt you. So also make sure that you connect with them. Nobody wants to work with an agent that's great, but you hate them. So make sure that you get along. And this process can be stressful enough as it is. And you don't want the person that you're working with to stress you out further. And then if you're in the market because you're thinking about building wealth and investing in real estate, find out if the agent that you're working with has worked with other investors. It's not the number one thing, but it's a very important thing to consider.
Excellent, thank you. We're going to turn it back to Elsie.
All right, we got a few more questions that came in. I guess your answers inspired some more questions. Someone asked if you can extend a 1031 exchange beyond the 180 days.
If you even go past it by 2 minutes, the IRS is collecting all of those taxes. So I mentioned the Delaware Statutory Trust as a way to bulletproof your 1031 exchange. And what I mean by that is if you haven't identified a property in 45 days, because you have to identify the property in 45 days. The IRS needs to know the address of the property. You can't say maybe this property, maybe that property. You have to identify one. If it's 46 days, you owe all the taxes. If it's 45 days and 3 hours, you owe the taxes. So that's the first step before you even get to 180 days, is identifying. Same thing with the 180 days. What a DST can do for you is bulletproof that. So if you are selling a property and you plan to 1031 exchange, you want to talk to someone about a DST. They can identify the DST as an option because the IRS asks you to identify 3 options. The DST can be one of those options. And if you don't find a property in 45 days, at least you have the DST. Now, with a Delaware statutory trust, your money goes into this investment along with lots of other people's money. It's real estate. It's very similar to owning rental property, except you don't have to qualify for the loan. You don't have to manage the property. It's things like shopping centers and hospitals and Amazon warehouses, things like that. Your money goes in and it stays in for a period of time. Could be 7 years, could be up to 10 years. And at that point, you get your money back, you get to 1031 exchange again. But one of the reasons some people don't like to do a DST is because once the money's in, the money's in. You got to leave it in until it runs its course. So if you need for liquid funds, you can't get them out, not without penalty. So with the 1031 exchange, bulletproof it with a DST, because if you miss those deadlines, you're going to pay all those taxes. And for some people, like my client that sold a house, bought for $34,000, sold for $876. They did things the right way. They passed it on to their heirs after they passed away. So they got a step up in cost basis, and their heirs only had to pay, they didn't have to pay taxes. However, if they had not done things the right way and their heirs had to pay taxes on all of that, they could have rolled that into a 1031 exchange or a DST, and their taxes would have been hefty, hundreds of thousands of dollars. So if you're facing something like that, you might want to go into a DST.
Oh, thank you for that. A lot of acronyms.
I know, a Delaware statutory trust.
But thank you for explaining that. We have a question about refinancing, and someone would like to know if you would recommend refinancing now to get equity for a renovation on a rental property, knowing that the new interest rate would be higher than their current interest rate, which is 4%.
I probably wouldn't. You have to look at your whole picture. I'm not sure what the situation is with the rental property. You know, if you don't get this money out and you don't renovate it, is that going to put you in a negative position? You know, so that's something that you have to take into consideration. But if getting money out of your paycheck is an option, that's what I would do. Because when you refinance at a higher rate, you're spending more. So if you took out 30,000 for the renovations, once you add all the interest at your new interest rate, you really paid a lot more. So personally, I would not. But you have to look at your full picture.
All right. When would be a good time to refinance?
It depends on where you are. You know, if you have a 2.5% interest rate, and I have clients that bought at a time when they were able to get that, the answer is probably never. Because when are we going to come back down to 2.5%? But of course, the answer is always depends on your situation, depends on the reason that you're doing that. You know, for some people, taking out a home equity line of credit versus refinancing could be an option. Just know that the interest rates on a home equity line of credit are higher than the purchase and the refinance rates. But it functions like almost like a credit card. You use it, you pay it off. You use it, you pay it off. If you refinance, it's a permanent thing for the term of the loan.
Wow. Thank you for explaining that. Someone also asked if it was smart to do an equity loan for a home that they currently live in?
It could be. Again, it just depends on their situation and the reason that they're doing that. I've had people that needed the money for something. If you're taking out the home equity line of credit because you want a new car, then, is that the smartest thing to do? Because that interest rate is pretty high. But if you're doing it because you need a life-saving surgery, then absolutely refinance the house if you have to save your life. So it just depends on your situation. But it's going to cost you, so you have to look at the cost versus the benefit.
Is there a time in a homeowner's life cycle where you would not recommend that they refinance? Let's say they're about 5 years away from paying off their home. Would you recommend a refinance?
Again, depends. It depends. So I'll tell you a story. I have a really good friend who is also my client. And years ago, this is before the interest rates dropped to where they were, she had 7 years left to pay on her home. And it made sense for her to refinance into a longer term because she got a really low interest rate. At the time, she was able to get a 2% interest rate because she refinanced into a 15-year, but her payment dropped. And her plan was to rent out the house. So the tenant was going to pay off that loan anyway. It was going to get paid off with somebody else's money. So quite honestly, if she had refinanced into a 30-year loan and taken that money, her equity to Burr, she would have made more money. So it depends. It depends on why you're refinancing. If you're refinancing because you want to take out all the equity and go on trips and buy new things, I'd probably say stay put and just pay it.
Okay. The participant said they want to refinance to add on a pool, an outdoor kitchen to improve on their home.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's a lifestyle choice. I would say definitely still consult with your financial advisor and see, if that is the best place for you, if you have one, to see if that's the best place for you to pull the money from. But if you do refinance, whatever your rate is, sticks for the term of the loan. So if you're refinancing at today's rates, then your payment will go up. You're in a longer term, usually 15 years. So your payment will go up. Are you ready for that? Are you prepared for that? Or would you rather just put money away? So, and it's a lifestyle choice. You want to enjoy your home. You want to enjoy your pool. So that's a personal decision. But it's going to cost you.
I believe that's all the questions that we have. Thank you so much for taking the time to answer the questions and giving us extra information. I have learned more than I thought I was going to and more than I thought I needed to. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been a pleasure being here, and I'm so grateful for the invitation and the ability to be able to share. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Vicki, so much. And thank you, Elsie, for the questions. Now, we do not want to miss an opportunity to make sure that we have asked everybody here to please do us a great favor to let us know how this presentation has impacted you. Please take a few moments to click on the link that is in our chat. I'm going to repost this again. And this is because we really like to know from an evaluation standpoint, are we touching upon the subject matters that are important to you? The reason we brought Buki here this evening is because real estate has been an important topic. And we're getting all this from the wonderful responses that we receive from you all. So you sending that to us and letting us know what you want to hear, we can find great financial representation, real estate, attorneys, legacy and generational wealth folks to come in, strategists, and even, psychological focused folks to figure out what we can do to help you with your financial future. So in addition to that, we're going to bring up our poll one more time. We want to ask the same question to you all to see what your responses are. And we're going to give you the answer to the poll. So we're going to launch that poll now. We ask if you could please respond to the poll. It'll be up in just a moment. And the question that we posed before, we'd like you to answer again. And the question is the percentage of white home ownership greater than that of Black and brown families? So choice 1 is yes, choice 2 is no. We'll give you all a few moments to answer that question, and we are going to then provide you the response. So we see that our tally is still calculating here. Give that a few more moments and let you know as soon as the tally stops. Oh, it's still going. Okay, so with that, we are going to provide the response as far as where we fell. So we have noted here that 85% believe that it is yes to that question, the answer, and 15% believe that the answer to the question is no. So what is the answer? The answer is as follows. Only 44% of Black families own their homes as of the first quarter of 2020, compared to 73.7% of white households. And Redfin found this based upon the analysis that was provided by the US Census Bureau data. So this is something interesting because the percentages show such a discrepancy. And there are many reasons, I'm sure, as to why. But here we're focusing on always, as we call it, closing the wealth gap. And we believe this knowledge that you're getting tonight can do just that. It can educate all of us to close our understanding and make sure that we're open to doing more. And if investing is that, purchasing real estate, selling or buying, and we want to make sure we incorporate that. So I will be turning this over. Thank you again, Buki, and thank you to our participants for joining us this evening. We're turning over to our Madam President, Helene Fisher. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah Bryan. Buki, thank you for helping us to better understand real estate investing. The information is very important and useful. We learned quite a bit this evening, and I heard several times that we've learned more than we thought we would learn about real estate investing, because you think we go into this topic sort of savvy, but there's so much more to learn. We even learned new terms this evening that we did not know before. So thank you so much for joining us. I want to thank our participants this evening, our returning participants, our new participants. Thank you so much for joining us for our Financial Fortitude Fridays. We are so excited that you are joining us. We had lots of great questions this evening. We had quite a few questions. And you can tell that when we have so many questions that this is an interesting topic. And so, Buki, we might have to have you back again because we probably have quite a few different questions that you're going to need to answer for the organization or for the group. And so we hope that this Financial Fortitude series meets the expectations of those of you who are attending with us this evening. And we're going to be restarting our Financial Fortitude planning for the fall of 2023. Our sorority year goes from July 1st to June 31st. And so when you hear us talk about the beginning and end of the year, that's what we are referring to. So we're already starting our planning for our October event, so stay tuned for that. This event will be posted with the rest of our replay events that we have for Financial Fortitude, and you can find those events on our chapter website. You can go to fcacdst.org, that's fcacdst.org, and you can find those under the replay or events replay link. So You can find this and the other activities that we have on that site. Remember to complete the evaluation. It is posted. This is very important to us. Provide us with the level of detail that we need to enhance our programs for you so that we can give you exactly what you need and we can provide the programming effectively for the organization. With that, we wish you fortitude in building strong financial foundations, and we bid you good night, and everyone have a wonderful Friday evening.